Hi, my name is Alicia, and welcome to Mess to Masterpiece. Today's topics is strokes and blood clots. So, my journey with blood clots started in November of 2019, and it was a Thursday afternoon, and I was doing my medicines. At that point, I had a PICC line, and was giving IV Benadryl as well as a few other medications. And when I got done doing my medicines, I just felt really weird, and I was having trouble breathing. And the most pertinent symptom was I had this really weird pain in the back side of my arm. So like the PICC line was in like this part of my arm, but it was on the back side that it was like really tender, and it just felt really odd. So not really knowing what was going on, I just kind of rode with the flow. And then when I did the next round of medicines, it did the same thing. And so I was concerned, but I was still like feeling okay otherwise, so I didn't really think anything of it. Well, the next morning I woke up, and that was a Friday morning, and there was something wrong, and my hand was swollen. My whole arm just kind of looked discolored, and so I had this feeling that there was something not right. So thankfully I have an amazing team of nurses and at a company called BioScript. And so normally when in doubt, I always just either call or go to them. And so I got as ready as fast as I could, and then drove up to where like the infusion center to where I could see my nurse. And I walked in, told her what was going on, and she looked at my arm and was like, "Oh my gosh, like, Alicia, you have to go right to the ER." And of course, like, I'm 25 years old at that point, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, I don't need to go. I hate the ER, but yada yada. And she's like, no, but really. She's like, either you're going now or I'm calling. She said, because I'm pretty sure that you have a blood clot. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's that? Like, why is that important? And she explained to me that if I didn't take it seriously, that it could really kill me. And so she told me to just go to the ER and just tell them that I thought I had a blood clot, and then go from there. So freaking out, I get in my car and drive to the hospital. And going into the ER, I was, just told them that my nurse had sent me because she thought I had a blood clot. And honestly, at first, the doctors thought I was crazy, because the doctor's like, there's no way that you have a blood clot and everything. But I was like, I don't know if I do. I just was told to come to get checked. So he decided to go ahead and order an ultrasound, and within a matter of minutes in the ultrasound, the nurse was like, oh, yep, here's the blood clot. And so the blood clot was right here inside of, like, on the inside of my shoulder. It's called a DVT, a deep vein thrombosis. And so what that meant was that was just the beginning of blood clot world. And so I was started on a blood thinner. Mine was called Lovenox, which is an injection that I give myself. And that just started out as once a day that I would be giving myself that dose. And then they were going to they pulled my PICC line at that point and put it in the other arm to try to give this arm a break, and just told me to be really careful. And so I, went on about my day, spent the whole day in the ER, but just was very thankful that, I hadn't flushed my line anymore, or it hadn't traveled to my heart. Well, fast forward a couple of days, and the blood clot was on, so we're talking now that Sunday. And I woke up kind of feeling kind of funny, but again, with mast cell and all my other conditions, that's not necessarily uncommon. So I just drove with the flow, went to church, and in the middle of church, like, we were standing up in the singing part, and I couldn't even, I was like gasping for breath, and it was awful. Didn't know what was going on. And so I remember that I told, at that point I was going into with a small group during Mass. And so I said, told the leader of our group, I said, I don't feel good. If I pass out, I need you to go get the doctor. And just very nervous. And so I didn't feel great that evening. I went home after church and slept for a while. And then when I woke up, again, just not feeling right, having a lot of trouble breathing. My heart just felt really weird. And so we decided to go ahead and go to the ER. And once we got there, they confirmed that I had a pulmonary embolism, or a PE. And so the DVT that was in my shoulder had traveled through my heart. And so that's what I was feeling in church. and then it had gone into my lung. So, like, it's honestly, it's a miracle that I survived that. Most of the time, the blood clots will cause people to just, to die because it gets stuck. So it was a miracle that I was even alive, and so they were then again more concerned about this blood clotting, so we made sure they increased the dosage of the Lovenox and just told me, be careful, and, if you have any more of these kind of symptoms, you need to return. So I proceeded in life just hoping that we wouldn't have any more other issues. So fast forward, I went fast forward through December and January, and we made it to February. Thankfully, no blood clots in the meantime there, which I was very thankful for. And so February came, and I had one night I was working on my laptop downstairs doing some things for work, and it was like the whole right side of my body like froze. And so like I was like half with it, half not, like thinking, and I couldn't move my right leg or my right arm, and just kind of just freaked me out, honestly. Didn't know what was going on. And so then it passed after about an hour. So I went up and started baking something to try to distract myself because I was just freaked out. But then it happened again. And so I called and ended up going to the ER, and they determined that I was having TIAs. So that can be caused by blood clots too, but pretty much a TIA is it's like a mini stroke. So that was like a whole nother world, and I started having more and more. That day was just the beginning. For the month of February, I think I had at least, I'm going to say like 6. That it was just off and on. It just happened randomly. I would be in the middle of something and one side of my body would freeze. But typically within an hour, it would come back. And so they were very hopeful. They put me on another blood thinner and just told me that it was a freak thing, that it wouldn't happen again. So February 29th, 2020, Leap Day. It was a day, started out as every other day. It was a Saturday morning, went to work, and we had a good day at work, busy, but it was fine. And so around 6 o'clock that evening, I went to do my medications. Again, IV meds, I had been doing it for months now, so it was not a new thing. And when I flushed my meds, I noticed that I didn't feel right. And it wasn't like with a blood clot where it kind of was a gradual thing. It was nearly immediate. And so I was like, oh no, like my head started feeling like I was spinning. And so I thankfully was at work with the doctor. And so I got his attention, and I sat in the floor because I felt like I was spinning and didn't want to pass out and hit my head or something. So I remember getting in the floor at the office and sitting up against my desk, and everything kind of went black. My vision, hearing, everything sounded like it was echoing. And I had this really, 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 really sharp, like piercing pain in my head, like all kind of at the same time. And it definitely, it was definitely very scary. I've been through a lot, but that was definitely that moment. You just don't know, is Jesus calling you home? Or is this is this it? Or are you going to make it? Or what's going to happen? You just don't, or even what's going on, I just didn't know. And so from then on, that night, I really don't remember too much. I know the doctor got me to the ER, which was a huge blessing. And they ran some scans and tests, and I remember at some point coming to and looking around, and there was all these lights and things flashing all around me, and I didn't have any clothes on, and they had trying to figure out what was going on with me, and just the fear. It felt like I was like stuck in my own body, and I could hear them asking me questions, and I thought I was answering them. But like everybody said, I wasn't speaking. It was just like I was stuck in my brain, and it's stuck in my body that wasn't moving. My whole body was completely like limp at that point. So definitely very, very scary. So after that night, they ended up admitting me into the hospital and determined that they thought it was a TIA, a severe TIA. But again, because I'm so young, that they didn't expect to have a stroke, but time would tell, and they kept telling me, 24 hours, after 24 hours it will come back, 72, but I remember that Sunday evening it had been over 48, or I guess it was Monday. We knew they said it probably at that point they weren't sure what was going on, and it wasn't coming back, and confirmed that it was a stroke. And my stroke, obviously it was very different because I'm 25, or I was 25 then, and I had a spinal stroke, which affects the body differently, and that's kind of what kept throwing everybody off. Because with a normal stroke, you have one side of your brain is affected, and normally that side of vision, and it's the other side of your body. Well, with my stroke, it took out my whole left side. So, my vision in my left eye, my left arm, and my left leg, as well as my ability to control, my bladder and bowels. So I became incontinent too, which was awful. So it was a shocking experience nonetheless, and I'll never forget that Sunday waking up and just not realizing what was going on, just being foggy. And then the next day, the therapist came in for physical therapy to evaluate me, and I just remember looking down and looking over at my left side, and my limbs just hung off my body. I had no control, and I'll never forget that moment. That will be ingrained with me forever, I think. So from there, they started teaching me with occupational and physical therapy, and we tried to get walking back, and as well as movement and everything. And it was a very big struggle. You don't realize how many things that you do with two hands, and simple things like putting on my clothes, brushing my teeth, just getting out of bed. The basic things to get around. So that was very, very eye-opening, to say the least. And I tried to just literally roll with it in a wheelchair the best I could, and just trying to remain hopeful that eventually I would get something back. And so through that, they continued to run a couple of tests, and then I got transferred hospitals, and they were wanting to get me into rehab, but that was when COVID hit. And so the whole rehab facilities weren't accepting patients, and because I'm on TPN too, they didn't want to accept me, because it does require a little bit extra, which is silly, but anyway. So I ended up in the hospital for 6 weeks from that stroke. So it was pretty crazy. So on April 11th, 2020, I got to come home from the hospital. Home looked different. I had to move from where I had been living. I had been living in a basement with a family from church, and I couldn't get back down to the basement. And so thankfully I moved into a Sunday school room of a church, and that might sound crazy to most people, and it did to even therapists and stuff, but it actually worked out really well, and it was this huge blessing. Not only that the church allowed me to, but also just being able to it was a flat space, small space with a handicap accessible bathroom, and so that was a huge blessing. So that started with home health, and originally I was completely against home health, and was, thought that I felt like I was an old person if I had people coming into my, house, but they ended up being a huge blessing, and I loved my therapists and my shower aide. They just brought so much joy into my day, and they were a huge blessing. I know I ended up having them from April until, I guess it was the end of July, and that's a long time, especially to be in home health. Most of the time, people aren't, but they ended up being a huge, huge, huge gift to me for sure. So, April 22nd of 2020, I had gone to a doctor's appointment that day. During the day, came home, had rested that night, and I again went to do my medicines, and something did not feel right. And then I actually on the way, I was transferring back from my wheelchair to a recliner chair that I was always used to sit in, and I fell, and I thought that I had jerked my port out, At that point I had a port, and I just thought I had jerked a needle out. That's why I felt so weird. So I called my nurse, immediately called my nurse, my home health nurse, and she started, coming. And then I also texted my neighbors, and they came. And by the time that both of them got to me, they said I had absolutely no color in my face or anything, like no color in my whole body. I was completely like white as a ghost. And I couldn't even explain how I felt. I just felt really weird. And so they decided to call the ambulance, needless to say, and so they took me into the hospital. And again, not really knowing what's going on, we had checked the port, and the port looked okay. So they weren't too concerned about that. And so the nurse started doing like a neurological exam. And when she did, I was in and out of it, but I remember watching my right leg like just drop to the ground. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's my good leg. What's going on? And so then again that night when they admitted me in the hospital and found out that I had another stroke. And the second stroke affected the right side, my right leg, and the left side of my brain. And so it affected more of my comprehension and ability to read. So when I started trying to read afterwards, I couldn't read. It was like I was trying to sound out the words. It was really odd. So yeah, it was very scary again. So coming home that Thursday, the next day they again sent me home, knowing I had home health and everything. That they were trying to keep everybody out of the hospital, and I sure definitely didn't want to be there with COVID. And so I had lost, at this point I have only my right arm working, which definitely creates a huge challenge, just trying to figure out how you're going to do life and trying to roll myself around in with one arm and in a wheelchair. And it just created a lot of extra stress trying to figure out how to transfer and everything. And so this pretty much continued from April and just months. I mean, and it was crazy because I was doing all this therapy and outpatient, inpatient, trying to figure out outpatient and home health. Now, I never went inpatient rehab, but they couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting anything back. And in a way, I was puzzled because, I just didn't understand, was this God's will that I would stay, only with one limb? And how would I, one limb and my right eye working? And how would life look like with that? And so I just tried, my best to roll with the flow. And I can't say there was many days that were really tough. And it got very lonely, but also just the struggle to survive was very real. So those were some long, hard months. And then adding in, sepsis. I had sepsis twice in that time period, and just a lot of other stuff going on. So definitely a trying time. But the Lord was so faithful through it all, and He just continued to reveal His love and His word, and His promises to me, just throughout that whole time. And just people that love God and love me were just so incredible about stepping in, and people I hadn't even met before, just loving on me and praying for me. And literally I can't even imagine the thousands of people that have been praying. Okay, so I do want to do a bit of just kind of show, this is a manual. It's called a manual chair. And so this is what I used up until from about April until mid-June. I just completely propelled myself with that. So you can see there's the leg rest that my legs would rest in, and then I had taken off the arm bars so that I could steer it easier, because I was using my one arm. And then this is called a power chair. This was donated to me by somebody from the veterans or the VA hospital. And so that was a huge blessing because it allowed me, you can see the little joystick over on the left side of the screen. and it allowed me to be able to go up into cabinets, and it can go up and down, it could go, side to side. It gave me a whole lot more mobility in the power chair, and it was a lot less work because I wasn't having to pull myself around. So that proved to be huge. This is also too, it's called a slide board. And so this is one of the things that was my best friend, or it has been my best friend as I'm trying to transfer from a toilet and to, whether it's a toilet to like a wheelchair or a bed or a couch or a chair. This thing is great. You just put it underneath your bottom and then slide. Pretty amazing how it really works. So these are some other aids that people can use. This is a shower chair, as you can see. That I could slide across and then sit in while I got a shower. Always needing help for sure. But also like that little brush there, that's how I wash my back. And then you can see that shower head will actually come down. It's a handheld shower head. And so then I could use that to wash myself. And I tried to do, my therapist taught me to try to do as much as I can. Especially when after having a stroke, I felt like I was powerless. I couldn't do anything. So the more that I could do for myself, the better. Here is also an example of a grab bar that was put in to help me be able to transfer from my wheelchair to the shower seat. As well as this is called a floating sink. At first there was a vanity when I moved into this apartment, but they ended up taking that out so that I could pull my wheelchair underneath. Otherwise I couldn't even get to the sink. And also like the proper height of a toilet, that's like an ADA toilet. And they also put in this grab bar, you can see there too. All to help for transferring and making things safer in the bathroom. So I hope that just a little bit showing you how my life kind of works, that helps as far as with strokes and explaining blood clots and things. Many people ask, could you have another blood clot? Yes. I'm on blood thinners, but that doesn't always guarantee that that I won't have another episode again. So I had a lot of anxiety right around the stroke, especially after the second one, and just wondering when it was going to happen again and what other parts of my body were going to be taken. And so it's really been a leap of faith for me to just trust God, and that knowing whether I have movement of my body or not, or if I have another stroke and I make it or I don't, like it's the Lord's will, and just continuing to put that in His hands. But so as far as where am I now, this is amazing. But up until a week ago, actually just a week today, I had no movement. Again, been working with months. It had been 6 months on Saturday. So a week ago, last Saturday. So they had told me it was 6 months from February 29th. And so I was told that I would never get any kind of movement or feeling back in my affected parts of my body. And so my whole left side, it was pretty much gone. That I would be in a wheelchair. That's what the doctors and therapists have pretty much been telling me. And that's a lot to swallow, being 26 now and just realizing that I'm going to be in a wheelchair the rest of my life. But God had a different plan. And so last Sunday, I was sitting in my chair, and I've been doing a lot of trauma work and counseling and therapy, and all of a sudden, and ultimately the power of prayer. And God did a miracle. I had, prior to this experience, I had not stood up. If so, without help, just the week before, I was in a hanging harness at therapy with 2 therapists supporting me and still like buckling. So, but last Sunday, I stood up for the first time, and it was like, oh my gosh, like, this is a miracle. And I was just in awe of God and just humbled by His healing power and His touch, to give me the strength and the ability to stand and not only like be wobbly, but I was really strong. And, I'll be sure to, I'm going to post those videos too. But then God didn't stop there, and He just continued, I'm starting to realize too, through this journey of the power of our words and the power of God's word, more importantly. And when we speak life over ourselves, that it can give life. And that's literally what happened. It was like my body woke up from the dead. It had been, I had been speaking death, and doctors had been speaking death, and therapists had been speaking death over my body. But as soon as I started speaking life, things changed. And so on Wednesday, just a couple days ago, I walked for the first time at physical therapy. So again, over 6 months of nothing, and then all of a sudden it was like everything turned on. And like yesterday I was able to walk a mile by myself, and in my shower, getting a shower by myself. So no doubt a miracle. I'm just so humbled by the fact that this is just a game. It's a game changer for me. And I want to share, though, I know that everybody's story doesn't end like that. So I just want to speak to those of you that don't, that maybe your healing hasn't come, and maybe not yet, or maybe it's not going to until heaven. And I just pray that continue to pray for you, and know that as I walk now, I'm so blessed. And I pray for you, though, because I know how much that struggle is real, and how sometimes you can pretend like, it doesn't bother me or anything, but deep down it does. And so just know that you're not alone. And so whether you've suffered from a stroke or a blood clot, or you have questions, feel free always just to message me, email me, comment here on this page, or check out my blog. But just know that you're loved and being prayed for.